Hey everyone! So, I guess today, in light of Easter that happened recently, I wore the same outfit. Just decided to put it on for the video. In light of Easter and kind of what that means to me, I wanted to talk a little bit about my coming out story. This will just be kind of the first part of that. Um, and I'm sure I'll just kind of fill in bits and pieces as we go through this journey together. Um, But Easter is kind of like a weird. It's good and weird and bad, and it's an emotional time for me because it's just kind of 3 years ago, Easter 2015. That was kind of my big coming out to my family. Um, so it was an interesting time. I didn't come out full time until November 2015, but April 2015 or March or whatever Easter was that year. Yeah, that's when I had a really long conversation with my parents, my brother, my sister-in-law. My girlfriend at the time was there. It's a very interesting situation. Um, because I'd only started, like, I guess you could say, started transitioning probably September 2014. That's when I started coming out to, like, just a couple people, like my girlfriend at the time and a couple really close friends. Slowly started presenting in public as me, feminine presenting. Um, and, just from the get-go, it just felt right. But, you know, eventually I realized, yeah, I probably need to come out to my family because, they might notice eventually that something looks different about you. Can't quite put my finger on it. It's like, oh, yeah, just growing out my hair. That's it. Um, a little more than that. Um, but it just kind of worked out that way. I was finishing up my master's degree at the time in biomedical engineering, a degree I'm moving away from shortly. But, the reason I mentioned that is because I was still a full-time student, so I was part of a LGBT support group at the University of Florida. And, with the support of them, that's kind of how I started planning coming out to my family. And, it's kind of been the case with me and a lot of my friends that I know in the trans community that, once you start transitioning, your timeline tends to move up and tends to move a lot quicker than you originally planned. So, coming out to my family happened probably 6 months to a year sooner than I was planning, but it was just like things are moving along. This is kind of seems like the next step in the process. So it was probably like a week before Easter. That was when I decided to call my mom. Um, Kind of just give her a heads up before having like a much bigger conversation in person. I just felt that that might be a little easier, so they could be prepared for the conversation, I guess. I don't know. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I don't think there's ever a good time to come out. Um, I mean, you kind of just have to have a sense of what you're comfortable with and how you think your family will react and maybe adjust to that. But it's kind of just like you are who you are, and if you feel the need to come out to your family, then you should. I mean, it's a lot easier said than done, obviously. But yeah, as I was saying, it was just like I called my mom maybe a week before Easter. Oh, super nervous. I've always been closer to my mom than my dad, but even back then, the closeness pales into comparison to what I have now. So having a serious emotional conversation was kind of just something that didn't really happen in my family. So it's just extra layer of nerves. Um, so, I kind of just started off like saying, telling my mom, "Hey, I have something I want to tell you. It's kind of important. It's really important." And then my mom got serious, and she's just like, "Okay, what is it?" I'm like, "Oh shit, no going back now." And I didn't know what to do, so I figured let's just do the most fucking awkward thing possible. And it's like, have you seen that show Transparent on Amazon? Yeah, I'm like the main character, except younger. That's basically what I said. I think she got the idea. But, then I went into more detail and be like, yeah, I'm trans. I'm a transgender woman. I'm in the process of transitioning. Um, yeah, I don't remember exactly what I said, but then my mom started crying. She got emotional. Seems to be something that a lot of parents do when you come out, where they feel guilty. They feel like they did something wrong that made you this way, or they didn't support you enough to provide the space for you to come out earlier, or whatever. She felt guilty because, I said something along the lines of, like, this is what I need to do to be happy. This is who I really am. And, she kind of interpreted that at first as like an extreme case where when I said, I need to be happy, she jumped to conclusions that I was never happy growing up, and that's not true. I assured her, as like, I'm still the same person, I still will be the same person, but I'm just going to be a much truer, more authentic version of myself, where I will truly be happy in my own skin eventually. But it's just kind of this path towards authenticity, vulnerability, and happiness that I have to take. I didn't put it so eloquently with her because I was extremely nervous and sweating bullets. And then, my mom asked me, hey, do you want me to tell your dad? And I'm like, please, thank you for offering, because I'm not sure how to have a serious conversation with him. It was hard enough doing this with you. And yeah, I just didn't know how to start that conversation with my dad. Um, Pretty quick phone call overall. Sigh of relief when that phone call was over. But, then that next big thing, going home that coming weekend, 5 days away or whatever. Um, and I'm glad I had my partner at the time with me. She was a great support. Um, we ended up breaking up, but, that's something I'll cover in a later video. But just touching on, she was with me for about a year, a little over a year after I started transitioning. And, we kind of knew that the relationship would end eventually, but, there was a lot of love there. We're still friends. Um, and honestly, I probably wouldn't have been able to do as much as I did, as quickly as I did in my transition without her by my side, so I am thankful for that. But that's something I'll touch on more in a later video or series of videos. But back to Easter, you know, I prepare in advance. I do my research. So, I printed up hundreds of pages, probably about 100 pages or so of like random articles and terminology and, what to do if your kid is trans type stuff, just to provide some literature, so to speak, for my parents. Um, no expectation or requirement, obviously, that they need to read it, but it's kind of just like, this is here. Please read it. Because, if I hand deliver it to them, they're more likely to read it than if I just be like, hey, go to this website and look it up on your own. Actually, to this day, I'm not 100% sure how much of that they actually read. Maybe I should ask them that. But anyways, this is probably, I always say it was like 2 or 3 hours. It might have been shorter, but it felt like an eternity. I feel like it was 2 or 3 hours, like, got in with my partner, sat in the living room, and it was just like this ominous silence. Or maybe I just felt that way because I was scared. But it's like, yeah, my parents didn't really know what to say, and, my brother and sister-in-law were there. Um, and, kind of just, I don't remember exactly how I started the conversation, but I was just like, hey, so here's some stuff, here's some papers. I guess I'll just jump into it. I told them, yeah, I'm transgender. I identify as a woman. And then, some typical questions I've gotten from people who don't really know anything about trans people. My parents are like, so you're into men now? And I'm like, no, I don't think so. I'm definitely not now. I wasn't then. Um, yeah, and it's just, I'm not transitioning to, being in a heterosexual relationship. Gender identity and sexuality are different. Yay. Yeah, and I guess that's something else I'll touch on in a future video too, is just kind of my identity is like navigating that space of being both trans and lesbian, and it can be complicated sometimes. Um, yeah, I mean, it can be complicated navigating that in like cis het spaces where people don't really understand transgender people, and then they get really confused when you throw in being queer and trans. And it can also be like a little weird navigating like lesbian spaces, because there's always that fear of encountering like turfy lesbians, like trans exclusionary radical feminist lesbians. They're not really radical or feminists, in my opinion, kind of just bigots. But, there's always that fear in those kinds of spaces that I won't be seen as a woman, so that creates an extra level of complexity. Um, yeah, but anyways, I digress a lot if you haven't noticed. I kind of just speak from the heart as I do these things. Maybe in the future I'll do scripts, but not for now. Um, but yeah, back to Easter 2015. That day that will live in infamy in my timeline of my life. Um, so, the conversation just kind of proceeded. It was like very quiet and ominous, occasional talking, just kind of explaining who I am and why this is important to me, mostly just because like this is something I've struggled with my whole life. And it's getting to this point of where if I don't do something and you don't transition, then um, yeah, I mean, I think the eventual thing was like, I was thinking about killing myself, and I knew I would kill myself in a matter of, I don't know how long, not very long. I looked into my future, and imagining myself growing old as a man just sounded like the worst fucking thing in the world. Because it's like, that's growing old as someone who's not me. Um, yeah. I just tried my best to convey that. It's taken some time to convey that well to them, because that first time coming out to them I was very nervous and scared. So, I didn't always go into as much detail or emotional depth as I wanted to. And I tried to talk to my parents a little bit about hormones. Um, they thought changes would happen overnight. I haven't talked to my dad about this since, but I thought it was kind of funny that he thought I would grow a vagina if I started taking hormones. And I'm just like, no, no, no. That's cute, but that's not how it works. That would be great if that's how that worked. Um, but no, I just kind of explained to them, I was like, yeah, the changes will be more gradual. I'll start to grow breasts, get more curvy, skin will get softer, that kind of stuff. Um, they're still worried that the changes would happen overnight, and my job would find out, and that kind of stuff. So, I told them, like, yeah, I'm probably not going to start them for 6 months, but, I started them, like, a couple days before that meeting. But that's something else entirely. I didn't want to really reveal that at the time. Um, but, yeah, where was I going with this? But yeah, I mean, it was a stressful conversation, It wasn't like the greatest thing to hear my parents say, like, of all the things that you could have told us, this was definitely the most shocking. It's not the greatest thing to hear, but I could still get a sense that they loved me. They still love me. But I could get that sense that, like, they were confused, they were scared, they didn't know how to react. But I could still get a sense that they loved me. I didn't get a sense that they were going to abandon me or anything like that. Um, Obviously something I was scared of. Their concerns really more boiled down to me having like financial security, me just being safe. They're worried about my physical safety and financial safety and, just that kind of stuff. Because, you see all sorts of horrible things happening to trans people like myself all the time, all over the world, just for trying to live our truth. yeah, I mean, it got a little more uncomfortable. I don't know if that's the best word. I don't really know what the word is, but it got a little, yeah, let's just go with uncomfortable when my brother and sister-in-law started talking. Um, because I actually came out to them about a month earlier. Because I figured, yeah, my only brother, my older brother of about 3 years, I figured him and his sister-in-law would be supportive. You know, being my siblings, being similar to my age, you know, never really talked about politics with them much, but I thought they're, kind of progressive maybe. I don't know. It's just making assumptions, and assumptions sometimes just make an ass out of you and me. Um, but I thought it was okay when I came out to them like a month and a half beforehand. Um, didn't really know how to handle the situation. I texted back and forth with my brother, trying to like drop some hints. Um, and then, eventually said like one of the last texts before I went over, like, yeah, I'm living my life as a woman. That's my plan. And he didn't really understand. And I decided to go over presenting as me. And I think that was a little bit of a shock to them. And then, I texted on and off with him and my sister-in-law for a little while afterwards, because, like, we didn't really talk about it much when I visited, which is kind of weird, but I didn't really get a sense that they felt indifferent. They didn't feel, like, super supportive, but they didn't feel, like, super, like, hostile or anything either. It was kind of weird. But I thought they're like, okay, maybe they're on my side. So it's like, okay, now that they know, they can be there to support me when I come out to my parents. That didn't really go as planned. Um, fast forward to Easter 2015. Um, that's when they started talking, and my brother repeatedly said he didn't understand. I'm like, that's fine. Let me help you understand. But he kind of took that to another level and said, like, I don't understand, so I don't think I can support you. And I'm just like, that's not really fair. Um, but, it's like, okay, maybe just give this some time. But they took it a step further, him and his wife, and they basically said they don't know, they don't understand. And because of that, they don't know how they would explain that to their future kids. And because of that, they didn't know if they could be in my life and didn't know if they wanted me the lives of in the life of their future kids. Keep in mind at this time they didn't have any kids. They recently had a kid. I still haven't met them. Um, it's a touchy subject. Haven't really even talked to my family about it. Um, but that's a subject for another day. It's a mix of sad and angry and disappointed. But yeah, it's just kind of weird. It's like these kids, they're just holding these future kids that didn't exist at the time against me as like an excuse to not try and to cut me out of their lives. And it's just like, well, I was not expecting that. And it's just like, I'm just coming out to my family now. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to try to make a scene about this. So I didn't. I kind of was just like, okay, okay, cool. Oh yeah, this is weird recalling this and saying this out loud in so much detail. I mean, I could go into much more detail, but it's weird recalling this just on the fly. Um, so I wasn't really expecting that from them. Um, I honestly don't really remember how the rest of the conversation went, or if there was much more. I remember it was just like really emotionally heavy, and then, I went outside with my parents and sat in their like sunroom, and we kind of just talked about lighter stuff. Um, and I think they just wanted to lighten the mood a little bit. Um, but before I left, they just checked in and they wanted to make sure I was okay. And I think I was at the time, because I mean, I think with my parents, it went it wasn't the best, but I think it went much better than it could have gone. It could have been much worse. Um, that was actually the start of developing a closer relationship with my mom too. Um, yeah, I think I can touch on that in more detail in the future. I think I'll stop there because that's kind of just like Easter. My relationship with my parents was a little rocky for like the first year. Um, but they never like outright abandoned me. They never got a sense they didn't love me. They're just processing, and I understand that, and I don't hold it against them. Um, it's complicated. It's complicated. I have a lot of mixed emotions about a lot of things in my transition. I don't regret anything that I did, obviously, but it's definitely not easy. Um, because it's like coming out as trans is different than coming out as gay. I mean, especially if you're somebody who's like me, who's like completely changing their appearance. I mean, you coming out as trans, depending on your goals and who you are and who you identify as, your appearance might not radically change depending on your gender identity or your gender expression, um, and things like that. But for me, it was like a complete transformation. So it's kind of like for me and for many people I know, coming out as trans is not something you can like hide. Um, it's like once you start that transition, you know, it's noticeable that I'm different. So it's like kind of one of those things where I have to come out to them or not see them. And not seeing them just, that wasn't an option for me. Um, yeah. But I think in future videos I'll touch more on kind of like the growing relationship with my family, especially with my mom, the complexities of all of that. But that's kind of like, I guess, coming out to my family. I think I'll do some more coming out videos, like coming out to some friends, coming out at work, um, coming out at school. Um, it's like a never-ending process when you're trans or queer or like me both. It's kind of a never-ending process of coming out because you're meeting new people all the time. Um, it's exhausting, but that's kind of just a recap of Easter has an interesting place in my heart. I've come a long way since 3 years ago, and this past Easter 2018 was really good. Um, 3 years later, my brother and sister-in-law still don't talk to me, but my parents are very supportive, and my grandmother is very supportive. I spent, Easter with the three of them, went to dinner at the retirement community that my grandmother lives at. It was really sweet. They're very supportive and affirming. Um, yeah, I'm just thinking about all her friends at the retirement community and all the comments about how tall I am. You can't tell on the camera maybe, but for those of you that do know me, you know I'm tall. I'm 6'4", so I think that's a topic for another video too. Navigating being tall as fuck while being a trans woman. Yeah, that took a long time to fully accept. That took a long time to get rid of a lot of the anxiety surrounding that. I'm just covering a lot of things. This YouTube thing is new to me, so I'm just kind of like, I'm doing this on the fly. So, but I kind of like doing that because it's just whatever comes to mind. It's not scripted. I think it's much more authentic that way. But yeah, I hope that kind of gave you a little insight into like my experience coming out to my family and kind of how it wasn't perfect, but I'm still very grateful for it going much better than it could have. I'm sad that I still don't have my brother and my sister-in-law in my life. That's something I hope will happen one day. I would love to be an auntie to their kid. Um, yeah, yeah. Coming out to family. Fun times. Be thankful if you're cisgender and heterosexual. Be thankful that you don't have to come out. But, if you are cisgender and heterosexual, take a moment and try to put yourselves into the shoes of somebody who's queer or trans and just imagine like how tough that is to just have to reveal something to your family that's like an integral part of who you are, but is a part of who you are that's very stigmatized by society. It's not very fun. I mean, I don't recommend it if you don't have to. But yeah, that's part of my story for today. Thank you so much for watching and stay tuned for more. And as always, feel free to like this video, and I'd love for you to subscribe. Please share with all your friends and family, your cats and dogs, anyone or anything you think would watch this video. Bye!